All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 IAC Annual Conference. If this is your first time joining us this evening, and if you've been with us since Tuesday or even this morning, welcome back. We are so glad to have you join us here on a very special evening. You could even consider this our first black tie event, even though we're all sitting pretty casual at home. But with that being said, it's a pleasure again. My name is Matthew Denetclaw. I'm the IAC Technical Assistant Specialist for the Navajo region from Shiprock, New Mexico. We love hearing, just everyone's stories of resilience throughout the year. And we thought, why not create an event surrounding that and really highlighting, who we are as Indigenous people. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker this evening. Consider him a host as well. This is Zach Ducheneau. Zach is part of a third generation to operate a family ranch on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in north central South Dakota. He and his brothers are now raising the fourth generation on the same ranch. A former tribal council representative for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, also among the third generation to have done so. He has been with the IAC since the 1990s as a farm advocate, then as a tribal delegate and secretary of the board, technical assistance program director, and now he serves as our executive director. Please welcome Zach Ducheneau.
Thank you and good evening. We originally planned to do this event and Matthew was going to come out in a robe with a pipe and a snifter of brandy, but we decided to go a decidedly different route. One of the things that really excites me about this storytelling event is it takes us back to our pre-Columbian roots. Before the Europeans drifted across the ocean and landed on the wrong chunk of land and called it discovery, we communicated in this forum. The grandfathers would tell the fathers would tell the daughters would tell their daughters. And we had a wealth of knowledge that we passed down in that manner. One of the things that's so exciting about the way we did this event, this virtual conference where all of this is going to be on a library for us to draw on the expertise of those that may come behind us. My grandkids may be able to see the sessions that we held today because we're capitalizing on our ingenuity and our ability to adapt, exercise our resilience, use technology to regain the value of that in-person storytelling that made our societies so great prior to the disease that kind of caused a few centuries of a hiccup, but we're going to regain it, rebuild it now. Got to thank Michaela for putting this all together. Had it not been for her vision and her effort in generating this storytelling event, we wouldn't be here. We'd all be telling our stories in our own private little circles. So it's really good that you're all here. I look forward to hearing the stories as we go through. Michaela, is there anything you'd like to add before I lead off with my story?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd mention is just a big thank you to our sponsors. Humanities Montana is sponsoring the cash prizes for the storytellers, and the Montana Historical Society has partnered with us and provided us with a reviewer, Deborah. She's on the call, I believe. And they are also helping us to promote the event. So just a big thank you to those two organizations.
Michaela had asked if I would lead off with one of the pieces I wrote for the LinkedIn social media site, and tying into the resilience theme, and As I thought about which piece to lead off with, I thought maybe I'd try to blend a couple of them together because they really tie in and they really ground us in the reality of what our ag producers are going through right now. Farmers, ranchers, growers, gatherers, hunters, they're all suffering a pretty similar plight. So the title of the article is an open letter to dang near everyone. Sometimes I actually do steer away from cussing, but I apologize ahead of time if there's some foul language that comes through here. Suicide prevention for farm policy is the question that we pose. And while perusing the USDA Farm Service Agency policy vault, I stumbled across a field office employee training notice explaining to staff how to identify signs of stress and warnings of a potential suicide. I've been a producer my entire adult life. Before that, I grew up on a cattle ranch during the farm financial crisis of the 80s, in a time when I was too young to really grasp what was going on. Yet there was always a foreboding sense that something didn't fit. It wasn't until I was much older and a victim myself of the same plight they suffered that my parents would share some parts of their story that started to make it all make sense. The day 9-year-old me and dad were picking through the junk pile for a replacement tire, it turns out that was our best option for having a tire on the pickup that could get us to town for groceries. Those groceries paid for with Dad's word to Bob and Faye Butler of Butler's Jack and Jill that he'd be good for it eventually. Dad was as good as his word, but I can't imagine how the old man felt trying to keep his sanity knowing he had 8 people to feed and was depending on this other fella to help us eat. My resourcefulness as a preteen mowing hay the entire summer without the ability to raise the mower bar with hydraulics because the cylinder went bad. Man, I thought I was smart. I'd pull up to the rock, I'd lift it a little, set it ahead, and then I'd go and drive off the rock. It turns out my resourcefulness was our necessity. We had only enough money to keep gas in the tractor and couldn't afford a non-essential repair. And I was expendable. I'm 50 now, and I'll be damned if I'm not encouraging my kids to get into this business. Maybe this is what drives me to ask the following question of you all. Why is suicide prevention a part of our federal farm policy? Is it because of Mother Nature and her unpredictable nature? No. I'd wager no producer ever said, son, stay out of this business because no one can precisely predict the weather. Nor has a producer ever uttered, my girl, I just can't handle the fact that these cows won't go where I want them to. Don't you ever pick this life. Or, I can't keep these godforsaken rows of corn straight. Don't make the same mistakes I have. Stay out of this life. The answer is plain. We have a system of ag finance centered around mitigating risk for lenders and piling it on the backs of producers, creating, in some cases, more stress than they can bear. The system must change if we want a different result. And it leads into the next piece, which is resilience is hard goddamn work. And I let off with a picture of my dad and my 3 sisters sitting on an old homemade flatbed. It's a black and white photo back when my sisters were all still with us and they were all still cute and nice. Photo credit goes to my mom in that picture with God knows what kind of camera, but this picture stood the test of time. And they raised 7 of us, and at times there were 18% interest rates. And the reason I used those words in the title is I like to borrow some of his descriptions from time to time when my own words fail me. So resilience, for lack of a better term, is hard goddamn work. We seek it out, we celebrate it, We lament when there's not enough of it to overcome the circumstance. We've even selected it as part of the theme for our own conference. Have you ever really thought about resilience in the absence of something to overcome? What if we could spend more of our lives devoting that work to something instead of tirelessly working against a system? At the IAC, we have the opportunity to interact and be inspired by 80,000 Indian producers every single day. Despite the fact that they already carry a vast majority of the risk involved in feeding society, all of the blame for any financial hardship they might experience, as well as the ire of a population that is certain they're destroying the planet, they persevere. The burgeoning regenerative ag movement possesses the collective hope that their resilience is enough to overcome the additional difficulty of implementing long-term solutions to promote soil health for the benefit of all. The trouble is, they are expected to do so within the same short-term focused solutions that created the problem to start with. Perhaps it's time we analyze the concept of resilience a little more closely, starting with the definition. Oxford Languages Dictionary defines resilience as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. I believe that without difficulty and resistance, our resilience can properly manifest itself as prosperity and innovation. So it's clear there must be forces opposing our efforts, transforming them into resilience. Shouldn't we then give our collective attention to eliminating the difficulties? We contemplate the largest of those stifling forces our producers face, the topic that comes up in every single conversation around agriculture: money. Let's continue to pull on that thread, but not too much, and here's why. Our ag finance system wears a threadbare garment used and stretched well beyond its limits, resulting in the fabric tearing wide open in the 1980s. New material, so desperately needed, has come only in the form of countless tiny patches, leaving producers exposed with no regard for the fact that a patch is only as good as the garment it's stitched to. And even then, it's a function of the tailor, which is a subject of a whole separate story. Who's sewing on these patches? So it should be clear the biggest difficulty that we're using our resilience against, a system that's pushed many folks to the breaking point and beyond, a system devoid of a next generation, fraught with increasing debt and bankruptcies, creating ever depleting soils expected to feed more people. It's an ag finance system that's broken that we need to fix. As we contemplate the regenerative agriculture movement that is growing, I challenge you to consider this question. If regenerative ag is such a good idea, why aren't more people doing it? The answer lies in another question. How many times have you heard mention of existing production income as the key to regenerative agriculture? The number is low. Ag finance farms our producers in much the same way as our producers are forced to farm the soil, extracting as much as you can in the short term with no regard for the long-term soil health. It's time for a new approach, and we think we've got it. And that's how I kind of left it off. I'd love to discuss more of that with each and every one of you when we get a chance. And I thank you for participating and sharing your story in this. And I can be reached through Michaela or at Zach@Indian.org if you'd like to follow up on some of this. Michaela, I'll turn it back over to you, and I thank you all for listening.
All right. Thank you, Zach. That was absolutely incredible. Yeah, Michaela, go ahead.
Yeah, we can go ahead and jump into our first story, which is going to be announced by Dr. Martin Reinhardt. So in this transition, I'll pass it to Marty.
Bonjour, Wabanung Meshek, Yak Yak Dijnakas, Bawa Ting Don Jaba, Kiche na mebene zibing and da ding, ajajak and dodem Anishinaabe Ojibwe and Ao. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Reinhardt. My family is Anishinaabe Ojibwe from the area we call Bawating, or the place of the rapids, over by Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Ontario. I live in Kiche na mebene zibing, or the place of the Great Suckerfish River, also called Marquette, Michigan. Miigwech, thank you to the Intertribal Agricultural Council for inviting me to act as a panelist for the storytelling activity, and to the storytellers and other panelists for sharing their stories and poems and spirit energies with us this evening. I work as a professor of Native American Studies at Northern Michigan University, where we pursued a research study a few years ago called the Decolonizing Diet Project, or DDP for short. Through this important study, we learned a lot about our relationship with those spirit beings that we call food. 25 of us committed to eating indigenous foods from the Great Lakes region for 1 year. We benefited significantly from that experience on a biological, a cultural, and a legal and political level. I'm so glad that the indigenous food sovereignty movement is growing so fast and that it's helping our tribal communities regain our health. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Tanakitan Towi, Tara Perrin, who will be reading her poem titled The Ground Our Grandmothers Tended To. As I listened to this piece, I remembered how my own grandmothers taught me about food, how resilient they were, how we would walk in their gardens, the woods, and along shorelines. They were strong women who cared deeply about family, and the land they tended to with love provided our families with love in return. With no further ado, I am pleased to introduce the Nakidan Towi, Tara Perrin. Tara?
Or wait, maybe a daydream gifted from me to my own granddaughter. Women tend to the land. We, God's creators, gifted to the earth. Women are meant to create. Over the years, what was once nutrient ground now has been tainted. She stomps through the muddy, sinking dirt meant to hold her in place. Better yet, keep her in place. A woman, so-called delicate flower. The soil beneath her is contaminated with past garbage of trying to thrive and survive her own people's exile. Not only told to deny her family, but the very blood that travels her veins. How can she grow? Her eyes told a story of how her leaves strained from being twisted by false treaties without consent, and soon, thorns bloomed. Still, her voice and visions of 7 generations revealed her compassionate petals. Her heart is strong, watch her grow. So she bears down firmly, planting her roots deep, and stretches for the sky. Determination flows through her like a river to create a new garden, produce new seeds, a gift to all. Our blood will con as the soul of this earth. She must grow. Storms of trauma come crashing in to uproot the very essence of her being. So she begins to dance in the rain, swaying to the drum of thunder, because even she needs a moment to release. Shake me, I groove to the rhythm, enhance my strength. You will never banish our prayers nor our lineage. You cannot change that which you do not own. I am growth. So brace yourself, so-called landowners, for I am not your delicate flower. I am creator of life, bearing seeds of renewal and brilliance. You can produce your delicate flower elsewhere. I'm producing resilience. Wopiraye, thank you.
All right, thank you. That was an awesome story. Be sure to give her a round of applause right there in your rooms, wherever you may be. I also invite you to share your reactions and everything for those of you watching through the Cvent platform. We have a Q&A there, which is meant for Q&A, but you can also leave your comments and reactions there, so please do so. Next up here, I want to introduce our next panelist and everyone that we're introducing tonight to introduce each story. They are well recognized and respected panel members who were selected by all of us here at the IAC, and they were so kind to accept our invitation to sort and work through these stories. So next up here, we have Mr. David Heska Wanbley Wyden. And David is an enrolled member of the Singagoo Lakota Nation and is the author of the novel Winter Counts, a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice, Amazon Best Book, Best of the Month by Apple Books, Indie Next Great Reads Pick, and the main selection of the Book of the Month Club. He also wrote the children's book Spotted Tail, winner of the 2020 Spur Award from the Western Writers of America, and a finalist for the Colorado Book Awards. He received his Master's in Fine Arts from the Institute of American Indian Arts and is a professor at the Native American Studies at Metropolitan State University of Denver. So, David, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Petu Washte, Amachiapi David Heska Wanbley Wyden. It is my absolute honor to be here today. As you so kindly mentioned in that generous introduction, I am a citizen of the Sicangu Lakota Nation, as well as a full professor of Native American Studies at Metropolitan State University of Denver. And as you so kindly noted, the author of the book, Winter Counts. You gave me all the accolades for it. I'll just note that, I'm really flattered to be here. And I think hopefully the book fits in well with this panel because Winter Counts is a story. It's a tale of resilience in the face of tragedy. So it's an Indigenous crime novel, but it's more than that. It's a book about Native identity, and it's a book about Native resilience, which is why we are all here. So again, I want to give my thanks to the IAC, and I want to give my thanks to the panelists and all of the sponsors. So it is my absolute pleasure to be here today. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Saul Jacobs. Let me tell you a little bit about Saul Jacobs, who is, as I understand it, enrolled at my alma mater, the Institute of American Indian Arts. Saul Jacobs is a creative nonfiction writer with work published in Inverted Syntax, Meat for Tea, The Valley Review, Flint Hills Review, and other fine journals. He's been a featured playwright and director for Emporia State University's Short Play Festival, the William Allen White Festival, and the Valentine's Day Play Festival. He graduated from Emporia State University in 2017, Sierra Nevada University, and is now attending the Institute of American Indian Arts. As if that is all not enough, he is also the editor and co-creator of the Titty Nope Zine, and he lives with his wife and children at the foothills of the Rockies, which is where I am indeed. I'm in Denver, Colorado. So it's a real pleasure to give a shout out to another Coloradan. Let me tell you, though, just a little bit about his piece, his story, Forgotten Children. So Forgotten Children, which you're going to hear here in just a moment, it's a punch in the gut, and I mean that in the best way. It's a punch in the gut work of short fiction. It's got a compelling voice, it's got vivid imagery, and it's got a really cool and interesting narrative structure. Now, in this story, we learn about the narrator's childhood, previous substance abuse problem, and hopefully his redemption as the narrator returns to his reservation. This piece has some real emotional heft, and it does a lot in just a few pages, and I think that it portends a great new emerging Native voice. It is my pleasure and honor to turn it over to Saul Jacobs.
Thank you all. Okay, here's my creative nonfiction piece, which is, I like to call it a lyrical essay. It's called Forgotten Children. A buzz, brick walls, peeling paint, bolt retracted with a clank. My metal door swung open. they swooped in. A noble cause? Simply another ward of the state, a forgotten child. Nancy Reagan warned, just say no. Mama? Diagnosed, force-fed, prescriptions, methamphetamines. Stop, focus. But Ronald screamed, just say no to education, childhood, friendships, sleepovers, first kiss, teenage lust. No to forgiveness, education withheld, and nonconformity brutally punished. All that was left to nurture was a withering sapling, hoping to become an elder. As my elder's trunk snapped, I turned and ran, saw in hand, like a terrified child, unsure which way the sky was falling. The northern wind ushered a different kind of cold across the reservation's barren lands. A cold that set in your bones, a cold that attacked each breath, a freeze that never seemed to thaw. Off in the distance, a pole skidder sputtered to life. Just before it stalled, the sound of its revving engine roared across the snow, across the frozen lakes, across the graveyard of stumps that stretched to the distant tree line like uneven wooden tombstones. Would you pay for my tombstone? I suppressed the plunger. Tingles flooded my body, toes curled, hair on end. I checked my pulse and used the other hand to shield my eyes. 2 years stuck in that circular pattern, repeated twice a day, until I'd fall out on a bus stop bench, behind a dumpster, or in a holding cell. I wanted to punish myself. I needed to feel the pain and misery that I'd inflicted on others. My heinous actions I excused as anger. At first, I took my anger out on bugs. I'd rip wings off butterflies, light ants on fire, and pour salt on slugs. My growing wrath would spread. All that stray cat did was claw me. Why couldn't it just love me? What was wrong with me? I hoped returning to the White Earth Reservation would prove therapeutic, because Oregon had sucked the life out of me. I craved belonging, was scouring for identity, tracking a sense of history while pursuing spiritual improvement. A lost child longing for acceptance, acceptance from a family, a community, a nation I didn't even know, strangers with names, skin, and features similar to mine. My wife and newborn child have provided a strange, new sense of acceptance, but I've still had a rough time since ditching the streets. It's been years, and I still can't get used to shutting the door behind me. I wasn't born in a barn, but I've been living in a converted one for the last 3 years. It feels like I'm in prison, except I'm the one locking the doors. It took years before I abandoned my sleeping bag. Most nights, I pass out on the couch, floor, or in the backyard. I'm contemplating dumpster diving a refrigerator box so I can finally get a good night's sleep. Those pills made sleep impossible. I'd wander the house, staring at my foster family, imagining their dreams. My foster dad once caught me sitting on the kitchen floor, devouring a chicken leg I dug out the garbage. He grabbed me by the shirt and screamed in my face, "Throw it away and go to bed." And I threw that bone across the room, turned around, and tried to bite a chunk out of his leg. I screamed like a wild animal as he pulled me off and slung me aside. I screamed and fought all the way to the juvenile detention center. I was still screaming when the assistant charged me with assault and locked my cell door.
Excellent. Excellent story. Great job, Mr. Jacobs. That was wonderful and very gut wrenching, and certainly pulls at a lot of emotions without question. So, yeah. With that being said, let's move forward now, and let's introduce Our next panel member to introduce the next story here is Mr. Craig Ironpipe. Craig and his wife, Billy Joe, raise commercial Black Angus cattle on their ranch near Browning, Montana. He holds a small business degree from Blackfeet Community College and previously sat on the Blackfeet Tribal Allocation Committee as chairman. Vice chairman and secretary over the past 11 years, the Ironpipes have raised 2 children. Craig has been involved in tribal politics in the Bureau of Indian Affairs Policy and Procedures over 25 years. Before coming home to the family ranch, Craig starred in films such as War Party, Geronimo, An American Legend, and Blood Trail. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Craig Ironpipe.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Ironpipe. I'm a 5th generation rancher here on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. I am pleased to introduce to you Michael P. McCreary with his story humbly giving of himself.
Ron, you're now welcome to share your story.
Hello. A modern day warrior would be described as a Little Traverse Bay Band's Odawa Indians conservation officer, as a one-of-a-kind, non-traditional law enforcement officer whose duties is to protect the rights of the people, hunt, fish, gather, subsistence, and commercial fish. I have been called a fish cop by my friends, but I like conversation officer better, as I would talk with anyone while on patrol within the 1836 Treaty of Washington Territory. Back in 1994, the young LTVB tribe was getting reaffirmed by Congress, a very spirited people, to continue to fight for their rights to be recognized. It seems a lot to me to have had the protection of belonging to a tribal community that I loved and belonged to and wanted to serve. Protector of the animals. Biologist Max and I received a complaint of an eagle that could no longer fly. The complaint originated at a farmer's field where the eagle needed help to remove the poisoned horse meat stuck in its croup. There was a council of eagles in the surrounding trees as we walked, and they were patiently waiting for the alpha female who lost her ability to fly and joined them back in the treetops. Part of the story is learning life lessons can be learned everywhere and are all around us if we pay attention. The McGeezy eagle was special, and as the several other eagles would not leave, but they all stayed and waited for the alpha. Some coyote hunters had cut open the hide of the dead horse, and one large piece of horse meat was too big to regurgitate for McGeezy. The euthanized horse would have normally been buried, but it was January. The hunters were using the horse to hunt coyotes on the edge of the farmer's field. Biologist Max and I walked and watched Alpha Eagle as she could only fly 6 feet off the ground, stop and glide away again and again as we pursued her. We used a fish net and some very large, big padded gloves to finally cover her so her powerful talons and beak would not hurt us. I drove the 3 of us to Petoskey Animal Hospital, where the doctor and staff retrieved the poisonous horse meat out of her croup. From there, she was taken to Wings of Wonder, where she would be given a chance to rehabilitate. We learned McGeezy let her presence be known in a dominant way to the other birds that were being rehabilitated there as well. A couple weeks later, it was announced that Alpha was being released at the LTVB powwow grounds in the middle of winter. This was the first for the tribe, as many people had come to see Alpha's release. The other eagles must have known Alpha was being released, because the evidence of the two circling eagles over the powwow grounds, this was significant for everyone involved. The sight of Alpha's release and her power as she flew 6 feet plus wings could be felt by the people below. She's joining the other two eagles in flight and headed back north together where she was rescued. Lesson learned. Life happens to us, all goods and bad. As a non-traditional law enforcement position, having been an officer, police officer for 10 years prior. This was heaven. Lesson: protecting something bigger than yourself is important to feel accomplished in something, which helps more than just a paycheck. Animals are perfect as they sacrifice themselves with nothing in return for the greater good of the people's needs. Similar to a soldier who has gone to war for his country, he has his battle stories to tell for their legacy, least he is not forgotten. Why not contemplate what to do with their own story, which should come from the inside out during that time of reflection? Thinking first to the people and learning from Mother Nature by observing. What comes to me is a story from an elder pipe carrier friend who told me a feeling of the breath of wind, as you can feel it but not see it. Those are all good memories. Most of the history of Native Americans has been hurt, suffering, and loss. They have had the good life before others came and took everything from them. My personal past and memories of my tribal history have taken me in some very deep valleys, which is very similar to the hardships faced by Native Americans. I wanted to see the true, simple beauty of how my ancestors would have lived between two worlds. My spirit needed to write this paper, express what was good, and to focus something better than what has happened. There is a certain simplicity of giving what you can to others that is very deep to do. I believe the 7 grandfather teachings, if lived out, a person could be a great example to follow. I believe it is important to listen to your heart, where one can actually feel and know what is right. There is a knowing, and with time, the art of listening and hearing with all of our senses, everything going on around in perfect peace. You will be able to imagine and at times get a visual of what was intended to see with your spiritual eye. My history of Odawa and Chippewa people, there has been much hurt and loss, with some victories included along the way. Overall, the people are very resilient, who each use their own unique way to avoid moving west to Oklahoma. They had the benefit of having each other to go through life together. I personally miss relationships I have made and am torn by the distance and missing activities can still observe the Northern tribe with modern technology such as Facebook and the internet. With different seasons comes time to listen to new stories. They are relevant and important for the people to get away and to think about life, then come back together to enjoy life as a people again. As an example of a simpler and happier time is when I participated in the Ghost Suppers of the Odawas. The purpose of the Ghost Supper is sharing a meal with others from the community, which is significant for the Odawa to remember and talk about family members who have walked on. But more importantly, the posting of the dates and knowing that the different families liked salmon, wild rice, a favorite venison dish, and always fry bread and a favorite corn soup. The purpose was to invite everyone for the community together to share their family's favorite meal with new and old friends and other families. The events would take hours to prepare and set up for the next group, hours to clean up. But it made each family come together to share with the community, approximately 100 to 175 people, sometimes having 3 different tribal family events in one day. I truly believe the seasons are there to teach us that there is change going on all around us. Mother Nature is guiding us on this journey. Each of the 4 seasons has its appointed time, just like the medicine wheel, where there are 4 phases of life. Knowing where you are in these phases helps us stay true to where we are. The men are preparing themselves in mind, heart, soul to provide worthy to be men. More importantly, earning their stories to pass on about their victories. By going to battle, warriors bond together, earn their eagle feathers, and have those stories to pass on as proof that they were honorable men. Lessons and teachings all around us. It is good to be grateful that they will remind you of the basics to stay in harmony with all. They will help you a spiritual protection of the unseen. An old teaching I recall is to live in a good way prevents bad things from happening to you. Also, an offering is normal to give tobacco back to the earth for something that has been asked for. On the Odawa side of my family tree, our spiritual animal is the turtle clan, which means truth. Slow down the pace of life. Faster is not always the best. Ways to reach your goals. Speak the truth. Do not deceive yourself. However, I was told by my mother to go by my mother's side because we live and are members of the Saginaw Chippewa tribe. But sometimes my stubbornness gets the best of me, as I was Odawa member previously. On my Chippewa side, my grandmother's family is the beaver, means wisdom. The beaver minds us to act out our dreams and make them reality. Wisdom is given by the Creator to be used for the people, for the good people. Used for the good of the people. Acknowledging the completion of the circle with teachings of culture, language, hunting, fishing, gathering throughout each season of the year. A pipe carrier elder friend of mine has told stories of paying attention to the animals around us. The stories will teach you if you pay attention. He jokes, school is never out of session. By reaching into oneself and humbly giving of themselves to the present, they will literally know and experience what you were supposed to do at that time. Our existence is exposed to take in all around us. Our existence is exposed to take in all around us. It is more difficult to stay in as we lived in a hurried life. This type of depth, to go deeper into the moment and getting more out of that experience that is being shown to you. What is going on spiritually with the earth, and asking yourself to pay attention. During valley moments of life, it is best to reflect various angles and see the season that you have been impacted, and if possible, find a way to use them to help others. That way, it was not a waste to have gone through it. One might reminisce on the past so they know who they are and help them go forward. A Chippewa elder has said natives are more spiritually aware than most, and therefore in tune with what is going on around them. Truth, positive, encouraging. I feel I got out of life was that I need to change. I had this place of healing thoughts towards my mother and father, and how wisdom of truly seeing their shortcomings was a result of their decisions. It was unfortunate that they were broken people trying to do the best they could to get through life. I see how I have hurt also from this brokenness because of their dysfunction. But looking at my grandparents, I see why, with minority parents, boarding school experience, and my dad's side mother passed when he was very young. And his dad had an accident resulting in a very serious head injury. I didn't want to reflect any longer back on the past 7 years on the negative side of the valley. Now healing has come. I really, truly believe I have overcome my personal depression by this class and this assignment helping me express myself. Basically, by unpacking all my junk, a career of 20 years in law enforcement, to a failed marriage, and the death of my father after all within 3 months of each other, to now a fully recovered man who has been made whole again. I can see that I still am a useful tool to this world. I am not broken, but my cracks can be used to benefit this world. Negócio.
Wonderful. Great job. Great job. Mr. Michael, that was a great story, a great essay overall. Thank you for sharing that with us for sure. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Jerry Jondreau, who's a great member of our panel here. Jerry hails from the Wikiwadong as a member of the Leonce Bay Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, where he currently resides with his family. Jerry has been working with his tribe's natural resources department as a technician and has been involved ever since. Jerry received his bachelor's degree in forestry from Michigan Tech and returned to the reservation to establish the first KBIC Tribal Forestry Department. After that, Jerry went on to become the director of recruitment for the Michigan Technological University School of Forest Resources and Environmental Sciences. His current endeavor is to establish Dynamite Hill Farms on the KBIC reservation with his family. Dynamite Hill Farms is a space where they are getting back to the land to revitalize a traditional clean foods culture, a reciprocal and healthy relationship with the land, and to rebuild a grateful community centered around Anishinaabe foods. Jerry and his family continue to exercise their treaty rights throughout the ceded territory and are continuously working to strengthen their relationship and reinforce their responsibilities to our shared natural world. And I know, Jerry, we've had plenty of incredible conversations, and you've been so kind to be a part of our podcasts and even promote your products through our American Indian Foods program. Welcome, Jerry.
All right, Miigwech, everyone, to all the people that are sharing their stories today. I'm really impressed with the amount of heart and wisdom that's interwoven with all those stories. And I guess I should introduce myself in our language too. Any opportunity that we get to do that, we should. And so Buju Nindawe Makani Duk. Get the gabaju ninda jinakas ajijak and do them. We quaidonk and dojabano jibwe nishnabe and ini and Dao. So like Matt had said, my name is Jerry Jandro. I'm from the Keweenaw Bay Indian community. We're a band of the Lake Superior Ojibwe up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The owner and operator, along with my family here at Dynamite Hill Farms, we've been officially doing this work for just a little over a year now. And we're focusing on maple syrup, maple sugar, wild rice, and fermented foods like apple cider vinegars. We're making a maple vinegar, and just trying to do foods in a good way again. And I think what we're doing as well. So the way I look at all these foods, right, is these are our economies. These are our cultures. These are our traditions. They have been for a long time. And I appreciate Zach for reminding people with his story as well that we've been doing these things for a very long time. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take those things back. But it's not just an agricultural endeavor or a food producer necessarily, because while we're doing this, we're also trying to, reclaim our language again and reclaim our ceremony again, and do all of these things in a good way with the intention that it's supposed to have. And I can tell you firsthand that, walking this path right now, it's extremely difficult. We've lost a lot already, from our elders and from the history and from assimilation and all those other things that have happened to really all of our people. And so, we find ourselves just kind of picking up all the pieces. And sometimes we feel like we're inadequate because we don't know these things and we didn't grow up speaking the language. And, we're really hard on ourselves sometimes. And that's okay too, right? Because we all want to do good. We all want to do things in a good way. So it's okay to be hard on yourself sometimes. But I also have to remember the good things that we're doing, right? And strengthening our relationship with this place. I know these trees that are back here on my reservation, they've been feeding my people for a really long time. And I'm back out there again with my family and my kids, and I'm giving this opportunity to my children now, something that I wasn't given. And so there's a lot of good things that are coming from this, and we constantly stumble and we constantly make mistakes. We're not experts at all. But that just kind of goes back to this whole theme of resilience. Our people are resilient, and I know that we're going to get back to these good ways again, and we're going to lift each other up again. But we're going to stumble along the way, and we're going to have issues, and we're going to have things break down, and it's not going to be easy. It's never easy when you're doing the right thing. But that's okay. We'll get there. We'll get there. And so, again, thank you for having me here on this panel. Thank you to IAC and all the other panelists that are here and the people that have shared their story. I'm definitely honored to be a part of this. And I'd really like to see this be sort of like a reoccurring theme at IAC where, we give our people the chance to share their stories with others, because that's really where all the knowledge is held. All that knowledge that goes into the food that's being produced is in those stories. So I think this is a really important part of that. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Skaya Ducheneau. Skaya spent her first 18 years of life on a ranch in the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. She's a 2017 graduate of Black Hills State University, where she received a bachelor's degree in business administration. As of the summer of 2019, she has also completed her master's in business administration from Capella University. After high school, and again after completing her bachelor's degree, Skaya worked for the Intertribal Agriculture Council, first as an intern for 2 summers and most recently as a project coordinator, where she was introduced to the native CDFI world, which is the Community Development Financial Institution. Skaya worked diligently to create the first national native CDFI dedicated to Indian agriculture, which launched in 2018. Skaya remains connected to agriculture just from the other side of the table. But even though it's from the other side of the table, it's an important seat at that table. And it's with my pleasure to introduce Skaya to all of you, and I hope you enjoy her story as much as I did. Her story is titled "Get Back in the Saddle." So miigwech, everyone.
Thank you, Jerry. That was a nice introduction. Like Jerry said, hi everyone, my name is Skaya Ducheneau. I'm an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and I grew up on a typical cow-calf operation on the east side of the res. After completing high school, I went and got my undergrad, and then now I get to run Occupton, a national native CDFI dedicated to financing Native American ag producers all across Indian country. And not only finance them, but get to finance them in a patient and innovative way. So it's really exciting stuff. I want to start this video off with a blog that we wrote here at Occupton a couple of months ago. And the blog just kind of focuses on some reflections of just like the resiliency and perseverance in Indian agriculture. All right. Growing up, I always heard maybe next year's prices will be better. Maybe next year the weather will be better. Maybe next year we can upgrade that piece of equipment. Maybe next year we can fix that piece of equipment, or something of the sort. Farmers and ranchers are always hoping for a better next year instead of dwelling on what is potentially going to be another bad year. The agriculture industry throws a number of variables out there that are out of the producer's control, mainly weather and market prices. It does not matter how much a producer may work that year, and the weather can come through and knock out a year's worth of work on a crop or cause detrimental losses to a livestock herd. But next year, the weather might be ideal with ample rain and sunshine, causing everything to flourish. Pair that with good market prices, and all the bad times of the previous year are soon forgotten. The perseverance and resiliency behind hardworking farmers and ranchers to continue on with their work every day has always amazed me. Even if the market prices are going to end up in a deficit at year's end, or a major storm rolled through and caused a loss, they rise in more ways than one with the sun and get right back to work in hopes of a better next year. Some of the hardest working people in this country are farmers and ranchers, and I'd have to say that no other group takes more of a gamble. You can call it an educated leap of faith and love of the labor than farmers and ranchers. I think it's safe to say that 2020 has thrown an unprecedented year at agriculture producers, but as always, they have handled it with grit, determination, and of course, the hopeful spirit that next year will be better. The staff here at Occupton are equally determined and hopeful for our producers, and will do our part. As the fall run is about to begin for many producers and the year is getting closer to the end, it is important to remember that we have made it through every bad year before this and will do it again. With hard work, hope, determination, and a bit of grit, we will continue on. And who knows, next year may be better than ever. History has shown time and time again that no one is more resilient than natives in agriculture. Not only do we have to deal with the typical variables such as market issues and weather issues, but we also have to deal with the tribe and BIA issues, plus all of the other land issues that inherently come with operating in Indian country. I could go on and on about the systemic barriers or nature of the beast barriers that we face as native ag producers, but ag is who we are as native people. We are rooted in our land. Our land is our livelihood, and that connection runs deep. So those barriers aren't something we like to focus on. Ag producers oftentimes get a reputation of being negative, crabby people, but that's simply not true. In all reality, we are innately glass half full people. Who else would get into an industry with so many barriers and so much unpredictability? Only someone who chooses to see the glass as half full. We choose to focus on the good side of things, such as the newborn baby calves, the seedlings breaking ground, the abundant harvest, and all the smiles on our customers' faces. What's resilience to me? That is resilience. Choosing to see the good when the odds seem against you from the get-go. The work ethic of farmers and ranchers is unmatched. Does not matter if it's 110 degrees outside with no clouds, or if it's -30, windy, and 2 feet of snow on the ground. Ag operators are out there tending to their herd. There are no days off in agriculture. If a producer's tractor breaks down, they find another way to feed the calves. Not enough money to fix that piece of equipment? No problem for producers. They will rig up a homemade tool to get the job done. Not being innovative and resourceful when it comes to problem solving is not an option for ag producers. They will always get the job done one way or another. That is resiliency. Agriculture is always perceived to be such a risky industry, and yeah, that's true to an extent. However, we will always need to feed ourselves, and we are not going anywhere. We're no stranger to struggle, but through that struggle, we continue to grow and come out on top. The silver lining in this whole pandemic that has captured our world is the innovation and continued resiliency in our ag industry. The pandemic has magnified the issues with our food system, and we are working to fix those issues ourselves. Instead of rolling over and accepting defeat, I see native ag producers are doing what we always do, fixing the problem for ourselves. People are wanting to start their own packing plant in order to ensure a steady supply of meat to their communities, or wanting to do a small-scale vegetable farm to maintain a stable flow of fresh, healthy vegetables to their family. Instead of selling calves on the hoof at the sale barn, they're now looking for new ways to sell their product, such as finishing the animal themselves and then selling the packages of hamburger and steak. There has been a huge movement for an urgency to feed ourselves in a more direct way. That is resilience, the strength to overcome any obstacle that comes our way. Now, even though I don't live at home and work on the ranch anymore, the values that were instilled in me growing up carry me through my job today at OccuPtown. I might not have been able to get a wire gate closed growing up, so I'd have to make sure to have a wire stretcher on hand to help me close it. And then technique became absolutely critical when it came to moving heavy objects and tipping barrels and things like that. And then patience was key when it came to working cattle. However, there aren't any wire gates or difficult cows at my office, but that doesn't mean I don't still use those values to this day. If I had a bad day at work, that's all right. We're going to try again tomorrow. The original plan doesn't look like it's going to work out. That's all right. I just need to think outside of the box and work a little harder to figure out a different way to make it happen. Producer had a bad year and payments are a little short. That's okay. We'll regroup and get a plan together to make next year more successful. The resiliency, innovative thinking, work ethic, and glass half full mentality are invaluable values that I wouldn't have got anywhere else growing up. A staple slogan in the ag industry is that when you get bucked off, you need to dust off your boots and get back in the saddle. And that is exactly what ag producers continue to do year after year, pandemic or not. However, this saying rings true louder than ever in 2020 because 2020 has thrown unparalleled struggles at us. Without a doubt in my mind, I know that ag producers will get back in the saddle and keep working hard in hopes of a better next year. I feel inspired and humbled getting to work for these producers every day, being able to get them the financing that they need to continue to persevere and be resilient is an honor and a privilege. Thank you for your time.
Great job, Skya. Really great job indeed. Yeah, plenty of points there to hit home and within your story, and very relatable, at least for a lot of us who work right here within the IAC. So, and great job to you and all that you do for all the folks at the Occupan CDFI. I want to acknowledge several of our comments that have been coming in through the portal here. So, once is beautiful, such an inspiring event. Cannot wait for each and every story. Well, I almost hate to disappoint you. We're already over halfway there. There's only about 4 stories left before we conclude the evening. We have another comment here, beautiful and powerful stories of resiliency. So thank you all for submitting your comments. And of course, we have plenty of comments coming in from our panel members as well. Thank you all for those. But next up here, I want to introduce Latasha Redhouse. Latasha Redhouse is our director of the American Indian Foods Program, and she also brought on the one and only Tommy Peterson. So we'll let them take this opportunity to move into our intermission segment to discuss the American Indian Foods Program, and then I'll introduce to you Mr. Buck Jones. Lottie, go ahead.
Great. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Latasha Redhouse, and I am the American Indian Foods Program Director. I did bring on our colleague. So Tommy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Tommy Peterson. I am the new Assistant Director for the American Indian Foods Program.
Okay, we just wanted to share some information with you guys regarding our American Indian foods. However, I feel like it's going to be underwhelming compared to all of the amazing stories being shared today. It's just so powerful and inspiring to hear from different voices all across Indian country. The IAC's American Indian Foods Program's mission is to provide domestic and international promotion and marketing of American Indian and Alaska Native foods through trade shows, technical training, and virtual or digital marketing methods. Pivoting early to continue engaging and educating consumers globally, we incorporated storytelling as a strategy to facilitate education of the value and unique characteristics of ag products originating from American Indian and Alaskan Native producers, harvesters, foragers, ranchers, and farmers. Part of our solution to continue to support the resiliency of Indigenous agriculture, we developed the Native Food Connection Food Box. Food plays a tremendous role in our community and in our culture, and is regarded as good medicine in Native American and Alaskan Native communities. And as teachings go, food is a living being and should be honored and celebrated for the life that has been given. And today I'm really excited to share the developments of the Native Food Connection, which is a sub-program of AIF, where we can continue to feed our Native communities, because we Native American nations cannot be truly sovereign unless we can feed ourselves. And now I want to just go ahead and let Tommy go share some of the unique activities we have planned for this month and for the future.
Yeah, so we are getting to fill some food boxes filled with our amazing American Indian food producer products. And then we are connecting with the backpack program for different sites, different organizations to get these food boxes to the people. There's a lot happening there. Hopefully we'll be able to take some of our small ideas that we're working with and be able to do them all over the country. And with the idea that we are feeding our people with our own food.
Right, and so I'll just go ahead and have Matt share with you one of the ways that we are storytelling and sharing producers' stories on at an international level. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, give me 1 second here.
There are certain inherent values that we adhere to, and respect is a key ingredient. That love and care is really, you can't help but notice it.
We're not just growing veggies, but we're stewarding the entire environment, the entire ecosystem that we.
Everything about gathering is of the earth and of the sea, whether it's harvesting from the waters or harvesting Nunatat of the land. You have to be focused on the land and your environment.
It's not just communities working in silos, but it's Indian country working as a whole together in order to feed ourselves.
Food that we're accessing is part of our traditional diets.
Red Lake initial food they had was the wild rice. So added jams, jellies, coffees, peas, sage, representation of our culture to keep our culture going, especially for our young people.
Everything that we produce, we grow ourselves.
It's also bringing back our role as Indigenous people and as original stewards of these lands.
For thousands of years, the Shunak people have been, harvesting seafood, and it's been a mainstay of their diet. We can take care and take it slow and do smaller quantities and higher qualities.
The food we grow and eat and the seeds we save, but also how we grow them, how we relate to our food relatives, and how we really restore this circle of kinship.
Every inch of tundra is a life force, and we can see it when you're close up to it or from 100 miles away.
That we gathered was good for food and for medicine. We always imagined it would be great for your skin.
Everything we use, from picking to drying to extraction, everything is used in every stage of the process.
Families get together to go out and camp and pick berries, and that keeps the family unit together.
We started small, processed about 3,000 gallons of oil in our first year. And we've steadily grown to the point now where we're going to process about 75,000 gallons of olive oil.
When I say cold water oysters to like a chef or a oyster bar owner, they really perk up because they understand their flavor is going to be top notch because they know that the oysters are that fine world-class product.
Using natural ingredients and producing a quality product we'll stand behind.
It really helps the rest of us move forward too in this larger movement of reclaiming and revitalizing our traditional foodways.
All right, what a great video, huh? Very nice indeed. Let me exit out of here before I make any more noise. Yeah, sorry about the couple of pauses there. I know it's about time a lot of folks in my town are getting off work, getting home, and now they're tuning into our storytelling events. So without any further ado, I'll introduce Mr. Buck Jones. Buck Jones is an enrolled member of the Cayuse bands of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. He was raised on the reservation in Eastern Oregon, growing up around horses, hunting, fishing, and sports, and has been a lifelong learning experience of tribal rights, sovereignty, and customs. A multi-decade of Columbia River Treaty commercial and subsistence fishermen who have done various duties, including harvesting, processing, and marketing of tribally caught salmon. Using this experience has led to being employed with Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission since 2004 in various capacities. First on the fishing site maintenance staff, which maintained 31 treaty fishing access areas in lieu sites on the Columbia River. In 2011, Buck assumed the fisheries technician position on the upstream migration project at the Bonneville Dam for the Fish Science Department. In 2015 of September, he took his current position of being the salmon marketing specialist. This position allowed Buck to work on product development, markets, providing classes on quality handling, seafood HACCP, cold water, food, and boat safety classes for approximately 700 tribal treaty fishermen. He's been involved in national and regional tribal food sovereignty groups, including being a co-chair of the Food Sovereignty Subcommittee for Affiliated Tribes of the Northwest Indians. Buck is a board member of the Gorge Grown Food Network, Mid-Columbia Economic Development District, and Columbia Gorge Tourism Alliance. So let's welcome Mr. Buck Jones.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for that pleasant introduction. Yeah, I think it's real important. I think following Lottie's presentation, which was really awesome or whatever, that I could really see a role in our tribal fishers being involved in that program. I will reach out to her offline as some of the what she's got going. I think we've already developed with this COVID, with getting traditional foods back to our tribal people and doing food distribution. As you mentioned, I work for Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, which represents the 4 treaty tribes that have tribal treaty fishing rights along the Columbia River, that being my tribe, the Confederated Tribes, the Umatilla, Warm Springs from Oregon, and Yakima Nation in the state of Washington, and the Nez Perce tribe. We fish on the main stem of the Columbia River, but we also fish on our tributaries of our reservations. So all of our fishers are like individual entities. I think that, it's been just a little over a year that I've met Lottie, and I think we have some real good projects coming up that I think we could work together. We was involved with the American Indian Foods, a previous person that had my position, but I really want to develop that more and get more of our fishers involved and in this program. So with that, that's enough about me. That isn't what we're here for. I'm here to introduce, I'm going to get my notes here right. Yeah, excuse me. Sorry about that. Oh, let me see if I can find it another way. Mr. Tazazamok, I'm really sorry about that pronunciation. I hope I didn't butcher it, but he's got a poem that he is going to read to us, Harvesting Corn. I really apologize. I can't get, technology isn't my best thing, and my notes just disappeared on me. So with that, I'll allow him to introduce him a little bit better. My sincere apologies.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share space with you all. Namaka Netwa in Tesosomok, Tasukamatin of New. My name is Tesosomok. I want to thank you for welcoming me. I wanted to link up a couple of stories, particularly in the topic of resilience is that we are, obviously, from what you can tell my background, we are the corn people, one of the corn people, and we are known as Masewaltin, and Masewaltin means to be deserving, and it's a kind of a question of obligation. So what are we deserving of? And I think that this is where we tie it all together with the other resilient stories like Zach and Solomon and Michael McGrary, where we are deserving of the obligation of all the sacrifices that our ancestors left behind. Give me a second. And so, part of the work that I wanted to do as an activist, I'm an Academy nominated activist in 2008 for a bunch of work I did around agriculture. And I'm a published author, a book called Gashes, Poems and Pain from the Halls of Injustice. And I'm read across the country and published across the country. I have a second book coming out, and that I wanted to share. This is a special place for me. I have worked with IAC before, and I'm very proud of the work that they do. And so this is a very short piece, but it kind of summarizes my experience and my obligation. Harvesting corn. It began that day, the long task of collecting corn. Corn dried on the stem, honey sun in the tree hollow corn. Golden dried corn slipping through fingers into the baskets on our backs. Corn rubbed against leaves, sappy, porous, producing salty corn, bloody corn, corn with streaks of blood from paper, thin husks, rough bloody corn, sweaty pollen covered corn, faces cutting through rows, feet breaking through sun-dried clay, lime-soaked corn of smiles, cheers, and tortillas from the harvest of corn. Thank you.
I'll jump in. I don't know if maybe Matt lost his technology, so we'll give him a minute to get caught up here. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep, here I am.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, I saw the comment there for bad ground, so I went and got myself a new microphone here. So hopefully that sounds better to everyone. Does that sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Hear me. Okay, great deal. All right, well, thank you for sharing. What a great poem that you shared there. And I want to bring on our next panel member, which will be Mr. Gordon Henry. Gordon Henry, I know, has been an absolute pleasure to interview. And to tell you a little more about Gordon, he's an enrolled member of the White Earth Anishinaabe Nation in Minnesota. He is a poet and a fiction writer. His poems have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies nationally and internationally, and his work has been translated into Spanish, Catalan, Hungarian, Greek, and Italian. He received an American Book Award in 1994 for his novel, The Light People. Gordon is a senior editor of the American Indian Studies series at the Michigan State University Press. Please welcome Gordon Henry.
Chinagwech, man, I appreciate it. Anin IAC, Indigenous Cause Gati Canoe and Donjaba White Earth, Anishinaabe and Dow, Mukwadodam and Dow, Imigwech Iwago, Mijayung, O Gishigud, Kimigwachimigo, Gamishiyama, Iji, Lima Dizijig. I want to thank Michaela and Matt and the IAC panel members for bringing us together. This is a wonderful event and a great opportunity. And I appreciate that introduction. It's always good to hear these stories of resilience. We all know the power of stories, how stories connect us. They teach us, they entertain us, they heal us, they return us to place, bring us back home, give us hope, offer us truth, allow us to travel, remind us of our obligations, of our relations, of how we survived, of how we are not alone. Stories remind us of the Atsakan, the ancient story beings and stories, and they tell us of the continuity and resilience of us as people in relation to earth, sky, all cultural memory held there, and in our minds and bodies, spirit, language, and ceremonies. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce young Anishinaabe Kwe, Ellie Mitchell. She's going to read her story, The Little Sister. Ellie is a member of the Saginaw Chippewa Anishinaabe tribe. She's on the board of directors for the Anishinaabe Cultural Lifeways Museum in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. She's working on her master's in creative writing, and she's also deeply committed to the Anishinaabe language, as she serves as an Indigenous language coordinator at Michigan State University. Please welcome Ellie with her story, The Little Sister. Miigwech, everyone. Thank you for all your work.
Miigwech, Gordon. Giniwan Indigenous cause Mingazet and Dordam Saginaw Ojibwe now. The Little Sister. Kosman is the little sister, the one planted last, the one who stays closest to the mother for the longest time. Kosman does not strive to great heights or reach for the sky. She spreads her wide leaves close to the ground and shades her sister's feet. She keeps the nuisance plants from greedily hoarding the nutrients intended for the family. At least, that is what Kosman's role is supposed to be. Her ability to fulfill this role can be dampened by a number of factors. In this particular case, she was planted far, far too late to have an impact on the weeds already firmly rooted in the Three Sisters garden. This was an ambitious project that seemed feasible during Sugarbush, when it felt as though the world were ending. Unforeseen were the increased telemeetings, the somehow more ominous grant deadlines, and the need to overperform at work lest one be added to the list of possible budget cuts. A combination of these can account for a slight delay in planting, but unfortunately for Kosman, her time also coincided with the brief return to a semblance of normal. Relatives stopped by and visited. A return to the office was mused over. Shopping was once again a possibility. There were ceremonies and a small gathering. Each of these, its own added distraction from the garden. Reality soon smashed this facade into bits. Then it was finding a testing site and checking temperatures for 2 weeks while anxiously awaiting the once, now twice, now thrice delayed test results. The overwhelming relief at seeing a negative result was only momentary. It was time to reinstate precautions and protocols, back to staying home, back to remote work. It was only after all this was done that thoughts returned to Kosman. The other sisters had been planted weeks before. Madaman was already tasseled and Muskodisiminak were blossoming. Bare earth was still visible on and between the mounds. Into this, Kosman was planted with a whispered apology for the lateness. The mishmash of non-sister plants grew into a jungle. The center mounds were no longer accessible to any but the chickadees nesting in there. After some false starts, which an app affirmed were not the little sister, Kosman sprung up. Despite odds against it, vines soon crisscrossed the mounds and began spreading past the garden boundary and into the yard. Blossoms arrived, pale orange flowers in a sea of deep green leaves. There is a cruel irony in the lives of those who work for the revitalization and accessibility of traditional lifeways. In theory, we should be connected to the land, doing what we advocate for. In reality, so much of our time is spent in front of spreadsheets, wringing out any extra money from chronically underfunded budgets. We sit in meetings arguing for a continued existence. We listen to highbrow discussions on the practicalities of decolonization. My youth was spent training for that kind of work and not in the garden, learning the names and qualities of plants. At least that is what I'm telling myself to explain why I cannot identify which of the plants cause my face to swell and my skin to be covered in hives. After a round of antihistamines and steroids, my gardening was relegated to patrolling the Three Sisters patch from a distance, calling encouragement to the plants. Even so, Kosman thrived until the frost came. An odd September hard frost that cut short what may have been an extended growing season. Madaman was already harvested and Muscodisiminuk were drying in their pods, but Kosman was still growing and took it hard. The leaves blackened and the vines withered. The greenery faded into brown. As leaves shrunk, more of the earth became visible. The chickadees found a new place to nest. A friend came and cleared out the suspected allergen, and finally I could venture in to finish harvesting Muscodisiminuk. It was then that I found one tiny Kosman, small enough to fit even in my hand. The little sister, it seems, was full of resilience. Miway.
Great job. Great job indeed. Wow, so many great things, or stories and essays and poems and anything that you can imagine we have heard tonight. Elliot, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Next on the list here, I want to introduce our next great panelist here, Sir Eugene Braverock. Eugene and I had the pleasure of meeting at the airport in Bozeman, Montana, and although our conversation was brief, that instantly sparked a great friendship, not just between him and I, but also the IAC organization. So that's what brings him here to us today. Eugene's a proud indigenous Blackfoot man from the Tall Tree Clan, born and raised near the backbone of the world, the Rocky Mountains. Now residing on the traditional land of the Miwok in Northern California, Eugene's unrelentingly proud to be from the blood tribe of Southern Alberta of the Blackfeet Confederacy. Eugene for his role as Chief Nappy in DC Comics' Wonder Woman. And because of that role, the world heard the Blackfoot language, and let it not be the last time. In researching language, Eugene has become to know that the meaning of words could take days to explain. Everything in Blackfoot culture has its purpose, place, and symbiotic rhythm, giving it a sacredness so that it is not misused, abused, or taken for granted. This is true for all indigenous languages, and it is important to educate and raise awareness for future generations. He is the co-founder of the Blackfoot Language Revival and the Oki Language Project, which you can both find online with a .com, as well as being an actor, stuntman, and producer. Eugene is also best known to his family as a loving husband and father. Let's make welcome Mr. Eugene Braverock.
Thank you, Matt. Again, Oki, Nistu, Gainekawan, Numkhtu, Tatsaki Tapi, Antuka Nukoa, Northern California. I'm, like Matt said, a actor, stuntman, producer, got my hands in a little bit of everything, and I'm very thankful to be here with everybody else on the panel. It's such an honor. You know what, being a storyteller and listening to these stories, the connection that always goes back to the earth and to what we, you know, what we nurture is again, that's a language within itself. And I'm very thankful to introduce the Ho Chunk lady that her story connected to me in a way that was very personal because my grandmother raised me, and it made me think of all of us, every Indigenous person. You know, for me, again, that force that drives me through my journey is my grandmother. It's her prayers, it's her blessings, it's her wisdom, and so that was a very amazing connection to feel and to have and to be reminded of. And again, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce a graduate from Southern Illinois University with a degree in philosophy and political science. She has a culinary degree from Madison College. She was raised in a traditional family, a member of the Medicine Lodge, and a traditional and ceremonial cook. She's the executive chef and founder of Wild Berries, a community outreach nonprofit, the Food and Culinary Program Coordinator for the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance, and she's an advocate for holistic approach to Indigenous food sovereignty and building community. She's a wild game specialist, butcher, and pit master. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena Terry, sorry.
Haini P, Haini Karagiwi, Ho-chunk Rajara, Hahemani Wenga Higaide, Naga Mekare Rajara, Elena Teriga Hingaide. It all started with a seed, seeds that came to us long ago. Wild seeds that decided to stay and care for our people, seeds connected to the sisters, seeds that healed. There are many stories within Indigenous communities as to how our foods showed up with us. Each seed story is beautiful in its own right, depicting how the plants came to our people. Their journeys are filled with excitement and adventure, caring for us along the way. This story, however, is a different kind of seed story. This story is a seed was planted within our blood, cultivated from generations of strength, resilience, and knowledge. These roots get their nourishment from our ancestors. They flow through our blood, feeding our spirits. This is a story of how our grandmother's prayers have guided us by the seeds that they left in our blood memory, through the pathways of traditional food knowledge. When I was a child, I remember that my great-grandma only spoke to me in Ho-chunk. She was amazing. She was a master basket maker, wore her traditional Ho-chunk dress every day, and was the undeniable matriarch of our family. When I was younger, I always thought she had a pet turtle. One day I asked her where her turtle was. Ke changara ha chinja nang? She looked at me with a confused and irritated expression. Jagu, what? It was at that moment, as a 4-year-old, that I found out her pet turtle was actually several turtles that people had brought for her to butcher. The turtle is considered to be one of the best warriors, able to navigate land and water, a natural body of armor that moves with thought and precision. They were a spiritual food. I remember standing outside as a wide-eyed, pigtailed little girl holding my Rainbow Bright doll, looking at her sitting on the porch in her rocking chair. At that moment, I realized she was Superwoman. I don't remember a lot about my great-grandmother, but what I do remember is connected to those unique memories. When I was still a young girl, my great-grandmother started her journey on. Like other families, we suffered a lot of hardships while I was growing up. I don't like to use the word trauma, but I do admit that life can be tough. There was tragedy and heartache, but there was also moments of pure joy and happiness. When my grandmother walked on, her sister came up to me after the funeral, put her arm around me and said, "I'm your grandma too. From now on, everything you would have learned from her, I'll teach you. And who she was to you, I'll be." To this day, she stayed true to that and has been an incredible source of support, knowledge, and strength. I'm forever grateful for the matriarchs that showed me the true definition of resilience. Through it all, my grandmothers were solid, always knowing what to say, always holding things together. Over the years, I became my grandmother's sidekick. She would take me foraging and showed me medicinal plants, tell me stories of how this person was healed, or how she remembered the story of when someone used a certain plant to heal an infection, or sometimes we would go out and we'd gather food. I loved sharing our findings with my moms and my uncles. They would always seem so excited to see what we would come back with, even if it wasn't that exciting. They would always make it seem like I was awesome for finding it. The best part was when we cleaned whatever we found, Grandma would show me how to preserve it all. It was never about one part of the food system. She showed me as much as she could about everything she could, and I loved it all. When I was with my grandmother, I always knew I would be safe. She protected my spirit in ways that only she could. I'd like to think the time we spent together was healing for both of us. As a teenager, we would go to my grandma's house during hunting season. Everyone would get up early. I especially enjoyed making breakfast for the hunters. While they finished eating and headed out for the day, I would clean the kitchen and prep the space to process the deer when they came back. I would be so excited when everyone came home and brought fresh meat. I couldn't wait to skin the deer and make gravy from the still warm organs. After the hunters ate lunch and headed out again, my sisters and I would clean the kitchen and process the meat. I can close my eyes and tell you everything from how the kitchen smelled to how the wood-burning stove felt. Those were amazing times for me. They connected us all, each of us contributing where our skills put us. There were the hunters, the gatherers, the growers, and the cooks. The real nourishment came for me in those times I spent in the kitchen. I would be in the kitchen anytime I could be. I cooked at feasts, medicine dances, at the Sundance, all the places that my family would go to pray. Those were the places where the meals have their own role in connecting us to the Creator, connecting us to each other. All this time, our ancestral foods have been there, nourishing us, giving us strength from our ancestors. These meals weren't just nourishment, though. They were vessels for intergenerational knowledge sharing. The conversations that we have during those times and the sensical memories that are developed there would resonate throughout my spirit during different times in my life. They became the voice that continues to drive me through this journey. Fast forward to recent history. The more I became involved in Indigenous food sovereignty, the more I felt the same connection with others that had similar memories or upbringing around our food. There was this incredible connection, a sense of healing and appreciation that came with every meal. I can't explain it, but if you've eaten a meal with a ho-chunk, you would know that it was cooked with intention, mindfulness, prayers, and good feelings. It's how we were taught to cook by our grandmothers. There's a different level of flavor that gets infused when a meal is cooked with prayers. Foraging, hunting, or cultivating our food wasn't about a lack of financial resources. It was always about having our foods. It was about this unique spiritual sense that comes from these traditional ingredients, and they continue to draw us together. Our grandmothers, the matriarchal knowledge keepers, knew the importance of continuing these teachings. The way that they shared the knowledge with us was by implanting it in our sensical memories. The way the fire crackled, or the corn felt, or the way the forest smells. All these feelings embedded in the activities that went along with them. All harmoniously intertwined by the calm sound of my grandmother's voice. These were the seeds of strength, resilience, compassion, kindness, and endurance that were planted as blood memories. Those memories will continue deep within our DNA as a gift from our grandmothers. And in continuity, we will share these stories, knowledge, and good intention with our grandchildren. We are our grandmother's prayers.
Great job, Elena. Very great job. I know everyone out there loved that, and I know we can't wait to hear more, even next year. For sure, for sure. Before we move on, I do want to mention one person on our panel who won't have the opportunity to introduce a story tonight, and that person is Deb Mitchell. Deb Mitchell has been the program specialist in outreach and interpretation at the Montana Historical Society since 2000. She has worked closely with the Montana OPI and Indian Education for All since the beginning of 2005, creating and adjusting MHA tours lesson plans, programs, and educator workshops to align with the developed 7 essential misunderstandings that are the guideline of the program. Deb is also the executive director of the Museums Association of Montana, working with the board of directors to support the 200 plus museums in Montana. Let's give Deb a big hand and thank her for joining us this evening. Okay, before we move any further, let's acknowledge some comments here. Plenty of comments coming in from the panel, just tons of beautiful stories and great jobs and all the praises for everyone who presented here this evening. So thank you all so much on our panel for being a part of this. Kind of looking here on the C-Vent too, plenty of good comments rolling in as well. So next and last but not least, I want to introduce our final panel member here, who is Ben Jacobs. Ben Jacobs is a member of the Osage Nation of Oklahoma and a co-owner of Tokabi, an American Indian eatery based in Denver, Colorado. Tokabi first opened its doors in December of 2008, added a second location in 2015, and a food truck in 2016. Tokabi takes its origin from Gray Horse, an American Indian eatery, a restaurant established in downtown Denver in 1989 by Ben's mother and father. Tokabi uses some of the same recipes from Gray Horse while expanded on Osage family recipes and ideas to create their take on American Indian cuisine. Producer Ben now sees Tokabi as an ingredient-driven restaurant with the ability to support food producers and communities. Outside Tokabi, in order to expand his knowledge of food, he has cooked and presented at various food symposiums and food sovereignty events, as well as traveling to tribal communities to learn about their foods, cooking techniques, and what's important to them. A major goal of his is to help share the voice of Native and Indigenous peoples through the experience of their foods. Let's welcome Mr. Ben Jacobs.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Wow, that was a great bio. Thank you. You kind of took what I was going to say for my own little intro, so I appreciate that. But just to reiterate, I would like to say good evening. I am Ben Jacobs. I am a member of the Osage Nation, which is located in Northeast Oklahoma, but I do reside in Denver, Colorado, and operate Tokabe American Indian Eateries. So beyond that, I just want to say quickly that I am really excited and humbled to have this opportunity to sit on this panel and listening. You know, reading the stories was one thing, but listening to the stories from each of your voices just takes it to that next level. And the heart and passion that comes from that is truly impactful. And I could feel it, as I'm sure we all could, through the stories you each told. And I am just incredibly grateful for the work that you all have done and what you've put into this this evening to share. And one thing I would like to say quickly is, you know, I share this as much as I possibly can, that a good friend and mentor of mine, Walt Poirier, always says, you thrive, I thrive, we thrive. And I think this evening and this is a beautiful example of that, of we each come from different directions and different communities, different regions. We all have, our work is all different, but it all comes together as belonging and sharing. And it is that if you thrive, you help me thrive, we all thrive. You know, we work together to thrive as a community, no matter what we do in our work. It is truly the success of us as Native and Indigenous people. So I would like to thank each and every one of you for what you've done tonight. I'm incredibly humbled and inspired by the work that you've all done. So beyond that, I would like to say what I'm here for. And I would like to, I'm honored to introduce, and I apologize, Gene, I'm going to do my best here. I've been worried about this all day, but I am here to introduce Gene Taranape. I hope that's correct, and you can correct me when you hop on. But Gene is a member of the Comanche tribe, or Comanche Nation, and resides in Miami, Oklahoma. She will be sharing a story this evening that I think has one of the best titles that I've heard or read in quite a while, and it is entitled, Turns Out Coyote Gives a Damn. Incredible story, incredible title. And in this story, Coyote gets involved in issues in Ottawa County, Oklahoma. And after reading this, I just want to say prior that in this story, Gene really creates a vivid image of community and of belonging. And it truly is a story of hope and of resilience, and of strength, you know, and I think it's a beautiful story, and I'm excited to hear it in her own words. And I would like to say one last thing in Jean's introduction, and then I will hand it off to her, is that beyond this one story, she is working on a collection of stories and a series of contemporary stories about coyotes. So from there, thank you all very much. And Jean, I am humbled and honored to introduce you. So please take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you. First, I'd like to really thank the Intertribal Agriculture Council and this community for letting me share tonight. And I'm really honored to be allowed to read my story along with the people whose stories I've heard already. They're really pretty amazing, and I'm very humbled by that. My story is called Turns Out Coyote Gives a Damn. Coyote had been down at Grand Lake for a couple of days, mostly fishing and mostly whiling away the last days of fall, when he saw on Facebook where his hometown, Buffalo, Oklahoma, had made the news. The post from the lead agency's waterkeeper, Rebecca Jim, said that they would be having a rally and a potluck fish fry on Thursday. And well, it was Thursday, so he thought he should get back to town and see what was going on. He hadn't had much luck fishing anyway, so a free meal would hit the spot. Gathering up his gear, he packed up and drove home. The weather had stayed warm enough for people to be outside, and the day was clear. The local Environmental Action Demanded Incorporated, or the lead agency, had been part of the town's response to air and water quality, climate change, flooding hazards and prevention, ecosystem preservation, and community health and wellness for over a decade. And attending their rally would be a good way to catch up with friends. And well, there was food, and the Grand Lake fish fry was legendary. Coyote drove into town from the south on Highway 10, and he turned onto Main Street, and there's a large arched welcome sign, "Welcome to Buffalo, Oklahoma, population 13,003. Someone had tossed a pair of worn jeans over the edge of the sign, and they hung limply there, slightly askew in the slight breeze, as if they'd been caught on horns. Coyote grinned. In this farming and ranching community in Northeast Oklahoma, a potluck meant plenty to eat, even if you didn't bring anything. And the lead agent's fish fry was always a good meal. He was already considering what options would be available for dessert. Coyote wandered down Main Street to Walmart, got a 6-pack of Coke, and headed back to the rally site in the lot behind the lead agency. If he was a bit early, no one said anything, so he set about helping set up tables outside for the dinner. Volunteers had begun setting up tables, but people also tailgated. The cook had already started frying the fish and hush puppies. Farmers, ranchers, businesswomen, and students began to gather. And he was right. The food was plentiful. Homegrown vegetables as side dishes and lots of salads. Some folks brought beef and buffalo dishes as well. And as he dished up his plate, Coyote thought the mood was a bit somber for a picnic rally, and the conversations a bit muted. But after the blessing, he found a place in the shade to listen to the speakers. Small pockets of conversation had started at each of the tables, mostly Oklahoma State no-use sooner nonsense. And while the kids hadn't settled down that much, the adults dug in. There was plenty of food, and it wasn't long before the speeches began. The crowd quieted, so a microphone wasn't needed. The local mayor introduced the topic, which quickly turned heated. The mayor explained the need for this rally started with Senator Emhoff's added amendments that helped pass the National Defense Authorization Act, a military funding bill, that allowed higher water levels at Grand Lake of the Cherokees. Okay, so what? Coyote wondered. Monkey Island, where Coyote had spent this past week, was well over 25 miles away from here. The lake level was normal now. It was a beautiful time of year, one of his favorite places to hang out. As the speakers continued, Coyote munched on fried chicken and looked out across the crowd. According to Emhoff, Oklahoma's senior senator, higher water levels at Grand Lake, quote, make the lake a better place for recreation and commerce, quote, and reflect, quote, just good policy, quote. Someone yelled out from the back. At the same time, it enhances the value of his lake home. Someone else shouted out that lake home was on the county records under his wife's name, and there was a general rumble among the crowd wondering why they would need to camouflage official records. Speakers this afternoon shredded Imhoff's logic that higher water levels were a good thing and noted that it created a direct threat to the health and safety of the town of Buffalo by increasing the likelihood of flooding, essentially damaging homes, farmlands, ranchers, and ceremonial grounds. Looking out over the meeting, Coyote saw among the crowd pickup trucks and license plates from the 9 tribes that consider Ottawa County home. Orange t-shirts that announced, "I flood, I vote," were distributed, and folks pulled them on over their shirts. The late afternoon sun soon reflected an orange glow. Shirts were fashioned with the signature bright orange representing Tar Creek, which runs orange because of the high level of iron in the water due to the runoff and mine water drainage from Tar Creek Superfund. Coyote grabbed a t-shirt, pulled it on in case there were photographers around. His tail still showed, but he thought the orange blended okay with his fur. The next speaker, Rebecca Jim, Tar Creek's waterkeeper and member of the Cherokee tribe, told the crowd that Buffalo had flooded more than 24 times since the early 1990s, causing over 150 homes to be destroyed. Each of these floods was characterized as a 100-year flood. In 2007, 10% of the town had been flooded, and the homelessness became a reality to farmers and ranchers in this county. She noted that countywide, 135 structures had over 5 feet of water in them. 500 families were in immediate need of temporary housing. Coyote could hear the frustration in her voice as she shared this information. She then introduced other speakers, and the crowd got visibly more agitated. Moving to the edge of the group, Coyote stayed alert. The potluck had attracted about 150 community members, but no one was really worried about food now. Coyote lost his appetite listening to the speakers. Citing the backwater effect caused by the Pensacola Dam built in 1940, the new speakers, experts in civil engineering, pointed out that when it rains, there's not much storage space and it floods upstream. They also note that the Grand River Dam Authority disputes a backwater effect exists and denies causing flooding upstream, but doesn't really explain why surrounding towns continue to flood. Grand River Dam, or GRDA's official statement contradicts court findings where the GRDA was required to make restitution for farmlands. Efforts last year by local officials to mitigate the crisis focused on requests to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to require Grand River Dam Authority to buy up flooded land or lower the lake before big storms. Imhoff's response limited control over lake levels and said that federal land, quote, "shall not be considered to be a reservation," quote. Fortunately, the Supreme Court disagrees with Imhoff, but that's the next lawsuit. As Coyote sat there listening to speakers, his mind drifted again. He recalled when as a pup he fished these waters with his grandfather, a time before the top end of the lake had silted in and excessive flooding began to spill the poison of toxic mining into the rivers, a time before EPA warned of the dangers and before Tar Creek turned orange and began to glow. In those days, grandfathers brought their children to fish these waters and would share stories of life in early Indian country when it still belonged to their people. His own grandfather had spent many hours with him fishing the Neosho River. His grandfather had loved spoonbill fishing in the spring, and together they had talked a good number of those neighbors into letting them harvest geese from their corn and soybean fields. His memories came pouring back, and Coyote moved closer to the front of the group, lost in his memories and caught up in the tension the crowd created. 2 more speakers added to the background and history of this dam, but Coyote's thoughts wandered again. Coyote now knew what they meant when someone said there's no such thing as a free lunch. Imhoff's landslide red victory in November assured this community that their voices had not been heard. These people, his neighbors and his friends, had yet to be heard in Washington. Yet in this time and in this place, Coyote heard them. He heard the layers of grief from ranchers for animals caught in the flood. He heard tears from elders for traditional grounds covered in muck and poisonous topsoil. Coyote heard mothers and grandmothers who lost their histories when floods destroyed their homes and heirlooms. Coyote heard farmers whose crops stood under 5 feet of water. He heard ranchers who lost their livestock in preventable floods. He heard anger and frustration. He heard all these things and more. He dropped his head. His heart ached. But as he listened, Coyote also heard strength, resilience, and hope. These people would continue to fight. He would too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jean. We certainly appreciate your story, and obviously whether it's, any other tribe or even right here within my tribe of the Navajo Nation, the best stories are led by the character known as a coyote. So thank you so much. Yeah, we have plenty of comments rolling in and just tons and tons of folks interested, especially in hearing more about where we can follow everyone. So what we're going to do is we're going to share all of our information there with Michaela. So Michaela will develop that into a solid Facebook post, which you'll see by morning. And you'll be able to follow everyone and keep up with their work. So yeah, thank you so much. And I can't say this enough, but yeah, our hearts are absolutely full as can be with each and every single one of you taking valuable time out of your day to join us. Whether it's a songwriter circle or even the storytelling circle that we have here today, the absolute best way to hear it is from the creator itself. And for that, I cannot thank each and every single one of you enough for the opportunity. It has been an absolute success to my account, and I'm sure each and every single one of you will agree. So this will be the last time you'll be hearing from me for the day. I want to send this over now to our executive director, Zach Ducheneau, who will be closing out the event. And with that being said, thank you all so much. My name is Matthew Dinetclaw. We'll see you here in the near future.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to everybody for sharing so much of yourselves, so much of your life, so much of your reality with us tonight. It's really been moving, and I look forward to hearing more from you. Michaela is going to be linking everybody together. Keep telling your story. Keep sharing your story. Share it with folks outside of your family, outside of your Tioshpaye, outside of your tribe. Share it with your elders. Share it with your Tagojas, with your little ones. Share it outside of our culture. Because unless we tell our story, our history, our perspective in a way that the rest of the folks that we're going to be forced to live with on this Turtle Island can understand it and support our position, we're going to continue to have to use our resilience. So with that, I would just like to thank you all one more time. See if Michaela's got any closing words, and we look forward to seeing you down the road in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't follow that up. That was beautiful. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to Zach for sharing and closing out. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. This is the 2020 IAC Annual Conference. Goodbye, everybody.
Pamapi.
Goodbye, everyone. Miigwech.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Miigwech, everybody.
Yeah, Miigwech, that was awesome. Thanks for sharing, everyone.
Make sure you hit up Ben's food, man. It's good.
I've had that before. It is awesome. Wish I was closer.
I'm hungry. It's only 200 miles from here.
All right. Pamapi.